We begin today here on the Hill Sunday with the Republican Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. He is the chairman of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee. Senator, thanks for being with us here on the Hill Sunday. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Blake. Good to be with you.
Nice to be with you as well. So I want to get to part of the conversation that's dominating Washington, but let's start out west and the news that we're seeing over the weekend in California. The National Guard has just arrived there in Los Angeles. The commander-in-chief sending 2,000 National Guard troops there as those violent protests against ICE continue. The governor there, Gavin Newsom, says it's not needed. Was the president right, in your view, to send those National Guard troops in?
I don't claim to have any special insight into the facts on the ground in Los Angeles, but there has to be law and order. You've got to protect people and you've got to protect the agents. So at some point you've got to defer to the people who've got the facts. The president felt like there was an issue. At this point you'd have to give him a little bit of kind of, okay, a little bit of a break there. I've read that 3,000 people have been arrested. That's a lot of people being arrested. So the facts on the ground are going to dictate what is necessary, but we need to have law and order, and right now I'll give the president a break on this.
I hear you on law and order. The Defense Secretary, Pete Hegseth, suggesting maybe this could go a step further, Senator, by saying if the violence continues, U.S. troops, Marines from nearby Camp Pendleton could be heading there as well. Are you comfortable with the idea of U.S. Marines potentially on American streets?
You know, I think it was in 1968, the Watts riots. That's a little bit, you know, my dim, distant memory that Marines were deployed then as well. And so it's not unprecedented. That's back when they had severe problems. Now, what I've read so far is that that does not seem to be the case that's happening in Los Angeles. But on the other hand, if it's needed to restore law and order, then sometimes things are required. But at that point, I think it should be dictated by the facts on the ground. Clearly, it should not be done just as a demonstration. But if there's a problem with the issue of law and order, as there was in 1968, if I have my years correct, they were deployed then.
Let me talk to you about what's going on here in Washington, a divide of a much different kind, I guess you could say. The big, beautiful bill, the one big, beautiful bill that is now in your hands in the United States Senate. Elon Musk torched it this week. He called it a quote-unquote disgusting abomination. And that, Senator, as you know, was kind of just the appetizer, because then it got personal between him and President Trump. Did Musk, the world's richest man, who's had a lot of say and some might say a lot of sway over politics in the last 6 months or so, did he make your job in the Senate more difficult?
No, I don't think so. The falling out, it's interesting, I suppose, but really what's really concerning is the one big, beautiful bill. And Elon was saying a lot of things about the president, and now he's pulling some of it back, or at least taking the tweets down. So I think it's better just to focus upon the bill itself. The bill is about how do we get the economy going? How do we create more jobs and better jobs for working Americans? In 2017, when we passed the Tax Cut Jobs Act bill, the subsequent growth in jobs and wages was disproportionately among those in the lowest quintiles. So the people who are less well off in terms of wage growth and better jobs, they're the ones who benefited the most. That's what we're trying to do again. That's our goal. That's what the one big, beautiful bill is about.
Does he have a point here, though, on spending? I mean, you know the numbers, but for the federal debt, we're approaching $37 trillion, Senator, and it's believed that we're going to be, I don't know, somewhere in the mid-50s, maybe 55 trillion in the next decade or so in debt. Here's what you wrote in The Hill earlier this year. You said the national debt is crushing the American dream. The goal should be economic growth, not just measured by the S&P 500, but by middle-class families' ability to afford groceries, buy a home, purchase a car, and live the American dream. To achieve that end, we must address spending and debt. So is Musk on to something here?
Yes, clearly we've got to address our spending and debt. And that is being driven, if you will, by 10,000 boomers a day becoming eligible for Social Security and Medicare. Now, we are not cutting Social Security and Medicare, period, end of story. So how do you address that? There's various ways. I have ideas that I've been promoting, but economic growth has to be part of it. And by the way, speaking about those middle-income families, one thing that the president has emphasized, things like no tax on overtime, decreasing the tax rate on Social Security benefits, no tax on tips. That actually benefits working people. So you're trying to get economic growth, better jobs, better wages, but also something that puts a little bit in people's pockets up front. And that's what the bill's about.
But how do you deal with the debt, though? Because the worry is from fiscal conservatives that this is a debt bomb. And we have, before you even get into this, we have trillion-dollar deficits, as you know, as far as the eye can see.
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned, 10,000 boomers a day become eligible for Social and Medicare. You don't want to cut it. I've got a plan to fix Social Security that actually increases benefits for some, but addresses the kind of shortfall that we have over the next 75 years. If we implement my plan, it would decrease the nation's indebtedness by 20%. So there's creative ways to do it. I do it by creating a sovereign wealth fund, but dedicated to paying for Social Security. That's a way to use the bounty of the U.S. economy for the benefit of the American people. With what money,
though? Because we're in debt.
That's what I've been promoting.
What money do you use for that, though?
Yeah, so if you put dollars in there, if you borrow $1.5 trillion and put it into a sovereign wealth fund, you've got the money. You can pay off the debt right away. So in a unified budget, that does not add to your nation's indebtedness. And that is according to the Congressional Budget Office. It's almost like I put money in the bank. If I need to pay off my debt, I just put it around. But if you invest that money in the U.S. economy, which is just the strongest economy in the world, then the benefits of that growth come back to benefit all Americans. Why don't we do it for Social Security like a corporation does it to meet their pension obligations?
You are a doctor by trade, as I mentioned before you got to Washington. That was your profession. Medicaid is a big part of this bill, as you know, and the Congressional Budget Office projected basically 11 million people, 10.9 million people will lose health insurance, Senator, over the next decade if this bill in its current form, or really basically something like it, goes forward if Republicans pass this. Here's what the head of the hospital association in your state, in Louisiana, said. They said, quote, all Louisiana families should be concerned. The critical funding for the Medicaid program is on the chopping block. More than 1 in 3 individuals in our state depend on this funding for their health and their well-being. Who's right, Senator? House Republicans who sent you this bill that could lead to that, or the man who runs the hospital association there in Louisiana?
Well, the hospital association chair was just speaking kind of in an existential fear as opposed to particulars. Let me speak about particulars. And by the way, in my medical practice, I took care of the uninsured and the Medicaid patient. That was my practice for decades. I know of which I speak. First, of those who are losing insurance, about 1.4 million are here illegally. Some states have chosen to give Medicaid to those to people here illegally. Now, most Americans think Medicaid should be for American citizens, but not for those who are here illegally. That's number one. Number two, we put in a work requirement. Who does that affect? Able-bodied, not disabled, able-bodied people, 18 through 64, no dependents, who are not going to school, volunteering, or working at least 20 hours a week. So, wait a second. If you're volunteering, going to school, or working for 20 hours a week, you keep your Medicaid if you don't otherwise have coverage. If you're disabled, you get Medicaid. If you've got dependents, you get Medicaid. The people who are not, who would be losing their coverage, aren't working, and they choose not to.
But you're comfortable with that?
Yes, because as a doctor, I know that statistically getting a job, going to school, or engaging in the community and volunteer work is good for your health. It is terrible for your health if you just sit at home and do nothing. Now, by the way, these folks use very little health care services. If they get pregnant or get in a car wreck, then they retroactively qualify. I think the head of my hospital association overstated the impact. The main impact is going to be on insurance companies who no longer get money to cover people who are healthy and have no medical needs. So I think the patients who need it will continue to get it.
We got to leave it there. Bill Cassidy is the senator from the state of Louisiana with us here on the Hill Sunday. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.